Hello, my name is Paul Canfield. I'm a member of our Realtor Association since 1997, and today we're going to talk about short sales. We're going to talk about the frustrations that short sales involve, what's happening in the future of short sales, and a few quick tips on how to help you get a short sale to closing. Hello again, my name is Paul Canfield. We're here to talk about short sales today. On the screen, most of the time, you're going to be seeing the forms that I'm going to be referring to, as well as the outline that we have prepared for you today. In short, I want to talk about short sales around Chippewa Valley, or around in our association area, I should say. We're not going to talk about the national level very much. We're not going to talk about how we got here or the future very much. We're going to talk about right now what we can do with short sales. And short sales, if any of you have had experience with them, you probably have less hair than you used to because you pulled it out over the frustrations that we have with these short sales. So, in the beginning, let's talk about quickly what is a short sale. It's just like it sounds. Person owes this much on their house, $200,000 let's say, and the house in today's market is only worth $150,000, so they're short. They just don't have enough money for what we can sell it for to pay all of the mortgages off. So it's a short sale. The problem is, our owner's embarrassed about this. Well, yes, they are. They're extremely embarrassed about this. Most homeowners do not seek out our help, and this is one of the primary problems we have with short sales. National numbers say that over 70% of people that are in financial trouble do not talk to a realtor before their house gets foreclosed on. And that's just an astonishing number, whether it's 60% or 80%. It's a lot of people are too embarrassed even to ask. So when you first get talking to someone about this is a really embarrassing topic for them. It's real sensitive. We're going to talk in a little bit about how if you do a CMA on their house, it's not a normal CMA. It's a really different sort of an animal. What can we do to get trained on this? Now, you're going to see disclaimers throughout this video. I'm not an expert. I'm not an attorney, and I don't give tax advice. But I do have a little bit of experience at this. But beyond what we're going to talk about today, there's a few places you can get training. One of them is the CDPE, the Certified Distressed Property Expert class, which is a nationwide class. Also, there is the SFR offered by REBAC, the Real Estate Buyer Agency Council. That's the Short Sale and Foreclosure Resource designation, as well as the 5-Star Institute, along with the old-fashioned way of simply gaining experience by doing these. And one thing I'll note, though, by having experience as well as having gone through some of the training, every one of these sales is different. There is no simple answer of saying, well, if you do it in this order, everything will work fine. It doesn't work that way. Every bank and every seller has a different set of circumstances, and the requirements seem to be constantly changing. So what you did a year or two ago with a particular bank might be different today versus how it used to be. So even though experience counts and it helps, it almost opens up the door to the fact that you know that each one of these is going to be more difficult probably than the last one. Okay, so now what? Someone calls you, says they might have to sell their house, might get foreclosed on, might be a short sale, maybe they don't know that term, and now what do I do? So you're on the phone, or maybe it's in an email, maybe it's in person. You need to decide rather quickly, is this something you want? Is this something you can handle? Something whether it's you or someone in your office wants to handle. They're going to think fast because a lot of times these people they're so sensitive, they're so embarrassed a lot of times, that if you blow them off even a little bit, or if you just say, I want to get back to you, they'll just probably move on to the next person. Because in these cases, they're not really searching for the person with the best marketing plan. They're searching for help. These are people that are probably going to get foreclosed on, probably going to lose their house, credit's going to get crushed, just might lose everything they have. And when they take the step to reach out to you, you need to be quick to say, yeah, I can help, or no, I can't help, either one. So decide fast if it's something you want to handle. And then as you're talking to them, and we're going to talk about some of the forms that are needed, you want to talk to them, you want to quiz them thoroughly, and you want to tell them ahead of time, I'm sorry that I'm going to have to ask you a bunch of these somewhat personal financial questions, but I need to know these things ahead of time before we go too far. The first one, how many liens do you have on your property? And those of you that have done short sales know that a property with 1 lien is not too bad. Property with 2 liens gets extraordinarily difficult. If you have 3 or more liens, it's going to be a really difficult process. So I want to know right away, in talking, how many liens do you have on the property? Second, are you in bankruptcy? Quite a few people are in bankruptcy currently, so they've already filed, but it's not discharged yet. Well, in bankruptcy, you probably, now I'm saying probably because I'm not an attorney, you probably can't also do a short sale at the same time. Consult an attorney about that, or have the client consult with their bankruptcy judge or attorney. But there needs to be a special dispensation from the judge saying that yes, they can sell an asset that is currently being held up in bankruptcy. So if they're in bankruptcy, that could be a red flag that this is something you might not be able to do. Also, ask them, have they gotten a sheriff's notice yet? Now, some people will be right up front and they'll tell you, here's where we're at in the process, we've only missed 2 payments, or we haven't made a payment in a year, or whatever. But the key thing is, I want to know, do they have a notice from the sheriff saying there's going to be a sheriff sale on their house soon? I can't tell you how many people have called me and said, there's going to be a sheriff sale in 2 weeks, what can we do? Well, at that point, it's pretty much too late. There's probably nothing I can do. There's not enough time left for me to do all the paperwork, offers, all that stuff, get short sale approval on a house if the sheriff sale is in a week or 2 or 3. Now, that's not 100%. There's possibilities that you could get the sheriff sale postponed. So it depends on the bank that the seller has. It depends on the seller. It depends on quite a few things. More than likely it won't happen, but that might be something you'd still want to talk to them and sit down and go over. Another thing you want to ask, and this is kind of awkward, but ask them, what other assets do you have? Do you have other monies elsewhere? Because we get people that think that, well, I'm in this one particular house here, and it used to be, I owe $200 on it, and now it's only worth $150, so I want to do a short sale on that. But I have a $50,000 race boat that's free and clear, and I have $200,000 in a Roth IRA, and I have my hunting land up north and a cabin on it on 40 acres that I don't owe any money on. So I can keep all that, right, and just short sale my house. Often you can't. Oftentimes the banks are going to want to get money from any possible source that they can. And so you want to take people away from their illusion that they can do a short sale on just this one piece of real estate and still be able to keep all of their other stuff. One of the forms that we're going to talk about, in fact, why don't we pause right now and go to the forms that we can bring up on the screen. The first form is going to be a sample hardship letter. And we'll talk about this, and you're going to need to tell the people that you're going to have to write a letter, a personal letter from you to your bank stating, here's your story. Here's why we can't pay the money. Might be a medical thing. Might be a job loss. Might be divorce, death. Could be a combination of all those things. But they're going to need to write a letter, and this letter that we have as a sample is purely that, just a sample, just to give them an idea of what they're going to need. But we're going to need a sample letter from you about what's going on in your life and why can't you pay all these bills, even if that's a little awkward to talk about. The next thing is you're going to have a checklist. I can bring this up on the screen now. The checklist shows here's all the documents that you're going to need to prepare in order to get approved for your short sale. And this goes directly to the question of, do you have the other assets? Because they're going to ask for your last 2 years of tax returns, all your current bank statements, current pay stubs from your job. So in a way, applying for a short sale from your bank is just like when you applied for a loan to get the loan. You have to prove your financial position in order to get a loan. Well, this is the same way in reverse. The seller has to prove their financial position to be able to qualify to have the bank take less money. And so that's where, in those forms, that's where the bank will find out if you have these other assets, if you have cabins up north and money in your retirement account, things like that. So again, I usually apologize ahead of time. I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that I have to ask you these somewhat awkward questions, especially since I'm a stranger. But I have to ask these, and here's this list of forms that we're going to need filled out. As long as we're on the forms, let's keep going over the forms. There's only a few left. There's a bank authorization form. You absolutely, positively have to have this form filled out and signed. The form on it, it has all the lender information, contact information if they have that for their bank, loan number, their seller's social security number, date of birth, and signature. And without this one form, the banks, the seller's bank, can't talk to us agents. They won't even begin the process. They won't talk to you. They won't tell you anything. They say we've got to have that authorization form first prior to beginning. This form that we have here is a generic form offered by the Certified Distressed Property Institute. Some banks will have their own specific form There's other generic forms out on the internet, but the key thing is you got to have a bank authorization form before anything can start. The next form, second to last form we're going to talk about, is the hold harmless form. And the short version of the attorney language on this says that, look, seller, these are complicated. We as agents have little control over your bank, and there's possibilities that this could all fall apart. And in short, seller, if it all falls apart, you're going to hold us real estate agents harmless for this because we can't control these outside factors. So in a way, it's a little bit like a get out of jail free card, but this protects you from getting in trouble later if, due to no fault of your own, the sale falls apart. So get the hold harmless form signed. And then the last thing is a listing addendum. And we're going to talk later about what do you do when you get the property listed if you do that. But the listing addendum outlines, here's how we're going to drop the price as the listing goes along in time. And we're going to talk about how important the dropping of price becomes as we go. So those are the 5 forms that you need. One note on forms that I want to bring up is that as real estate agents, licensees in Wisconsin, we are only allowed to use the forms through zip forms basically that are approved by the WRA. So when we say use, what we're talking about is fill out. So on a lot of these forms, we're not really using them if the seller fills them out. Now, talk to your broker before using these forms and find out if your broker would like to have an attorney rewrite them in the way that your office would like, and then we can use them by filling them in. But otherwise, simply give them to the client and say, I need you to fill out these forms and sign them here on the appropriate line. So there's my disclaimer on using non-state approved forms. Phone call for me. Last on section 3 here, a couple things. One other question to ask the seller is, once the house sells, what's your plan to move on? And there's different ways you can ask that question. You can just simply say, well, what's next after we sell, after we close? But it's surprising how many times I've had people call and I get to this point and we're talking about liens and bankruptcy and all this stuff, and yet when I ask about, what's your plan to move, they say, oh, we don't plan to move. We're trying to restructure our loan. We would just like to, they don't come out and say this, but they would like to use us agents as a delaying factor so that they can stay in their house. Really what they're trying to do is get a loan restructuring or something and be able to stay in the house. Well, we're here to help people, that's true, but we're here to sell real estate. That's the main point. And so find out from them, are you planning to move out of your house? Is that, in the long run, that's the goal, right? And get it out of them that, yes, that's the goal. We are moving on to our next thing. As a subset of that question of what are you going to do next when you're going to move, one thing to note is that banks have different legal rights if a property is vacant or not. So a bank can accelerate the foreclosure process in some instances if the property is already vacant. And also they can secure the property. They sometimes, depending on the loan, they can come in and change the locks and winterize the house and whatever. So that also might be a factor in what happens when your property is listed and the seller is either still living there or not still living there. So be aware of that. Okay, seller says, yeah, we want to, talk about this and do more, and you as an agent say, yes, okay, I'm willing to talk with you more. Next thing you need to do, order a preliminary title search. This is a must. Talk to your title company, get the address, and order a title search. Oftentimes, most sellers in general don't know exactly all what's on their title, but in particular on this, you have to know how many liens are on the property, regardless of what the seller said earlier. How many liens, who's the current lien holder, are the taxes paid, other bills. A lot of times if their reason for doing this is possibly a medical thing, or you're going to have other liens on the property, judgments by hospitals, things like that. All of those are things that are going to need to be considered prior to taking on this listing. Then, last suggestion, this is a personal one from me. Talking to the seller, and we say, okay, we're going to meet in a couple days at this time. I will tell them that I would prefer to get them all the paperwork ahead of time. Now, the normal paperwork is all of our regular listing contract paperwork, but then also all of these forms that we discussed earlier. And I want to get it to them ahead of time and ask them, please fill out everything that you can prior to me getting there. Now this does a couple of things. Now I like to do this in a normal situation with any seller, but for a short sale seller, back to the idea that people are embarrassed and they're frustrated and they're ready to give up, I want to know how motivated they are to go through this process with me, because this is a team process. There's stuff I do, the marketing stuff and the signs and the contracts and all that, but there's the stuff that the seller does. Now the normal things we want sellers to do is have a clean house and let us show the house on short notice and on the evenings and weekends and all that, but additionally they have to do all this paperwork, and it's extremely frustrating. All this tax stuff and forms that their bank asks them to fill out, and they have to be cooperative to do this. If they don't do it, the short sale will never go anywhere. So by me sending them everything ahead of time, and then when I show up at the appointment and they say, yep, got it all filled out, here's all the forms, and here's my 2 years of tax returns, and here's my bank statements, and I've got it all ready, that tells me something about this client versus the one, as an example, I went to 2 weeks ago, and the client had nothing ready, absolutely nothing. Had forgotten to mention that his sister had a very large lien on his house in addition to his bank, and that the sister hated him, and his main focus, he wanted to tell me stories about Vietnam, which stories about Vietnam are okay, but they're not going to help us get the short sale process through. So this guy was not at all ready. So I was able to save time by the fact that I said, okay, well, I'm going to come back when you get all this paperwork ready. Now, you'll be surprised to hear he has not called back yet. But I'm not able to help them if they're not going to do this paperwork. So then from that point forward, there's no point in putting up signs, getting stuff on the MLS, getting buyers excited about a house that they're never going to be able to buy. So that's a key thing. Get them stuff first, and in a way, test them. See how willing they are to cooperate with you. Okay, earlier at the beginning, I said that the listing appointment for these is not a normal appointment. And it's not. It is extremely different than anything we do in normal real estate. Normal real estate, you want to dress up, and you want to wear your best suit, and you want to have nice color charts and graphs, and you want to have done your research really well. Maybe you want to have a laptop or an iPad so you can show how good you are with technology. And you're going to have charts showing how great your company is and how much you sell each year, and you're going to be competitive in all these areas. And the problem is, in these situations, with the people that are embarrassed, sad, frustrated, they don't care about any of that stuff. They don't care how great your charts are. They don't care about your website, how many hits you get. They want help. They're drowning, and they want help from you. They just want to get out of this situation. They don't know what to do. And some of these people have actually talked to their bank, and the bank pushed back and said, talk to a realtor and sell your house. So they're just looking to us going, what do I do? You need to be prepared for stories. I wasn't making light of the guy that wanted to talk about Vietnam stories, but a lot of times you're going to hear stories about, here's why the bank is being bad to me. Here's why I can't sell, or I can't pay my bills. It's not my fault. I lost my job. Political stories, all sorts of things. There's going to be tears. I would say that 70% of the listing appointments I go on, somebody's breaking down and crying for a good while in the process. And so this is unlike normal sales. You still need to come ready with all your charts and stats and laptop and iPad and all the other cool stuff, because every once in a while some seller will care about that stuff. But you don't want to be set in your mind where you're doing a rigid, structured presentation saying, I got to get through my charts and my graphs. Because if the people don't care, forget all that. Tell them how you can help them get out from under this. So, be ready for their stories. Also, be ready to go. If they say after the stories, after the talk, after you walk them through all the paperwork they're going to need to go through, and they go, yes, we want to do this, you need to be ready to go. Have your sign ready, have your lockbox ready, get the key from them, have the listing contract there and ready to sign, be ready to go. Oftentimes, and I hate to say this, but oftentimes these people are less concerned about us in these situations than they are in a normal situation. This isn't a situation where they're going to interview 3 or 4 or 5 agents and pick the one that they feel is best. Oftentimes, if you're sitting there and they're ready to go, they're ready, and they consider you good enough just because you're there. And the bank said, hire a realtor. So be ready. Get your key, get your lockbox, stick the sign up, take some pictures, go, and let's start. You don't want them to cool back off. One question that they will ask you, and virtually every person will ask, is, I don't get it. Why would my bank take less? I don't understand how that works. I owe $200, you're telling me the house is only worth 150. Why would they take 50 grand less and then just be okay with that and let me go? How does that work? Well, the national averages, here's some national numbers if you want to write them down. Banks across the nation, if they foreclose on people, they are recovering anywhere between 22 and 47 cents on the dollar. So basically less than half of what they are owed. If they agree to a short sale, national numbers show they're recovering anywhere between 44 and about 73 cents on the dollar. So regardless of how accurate those statistics are, because we know that you can get statistics from many different surveys, the short version is that if they foreclose, it costs the bank more on average than if they do a short sale. So then you want to keep this in mind when in the future you get offers on a property, and the one that we keep referring to where they owe $200,000, if someone offers $50,000 because they want to get a deal, on average the bank's probably not going to take that, because the bank knows that if we foreclose, we might get up to 50 cents on the dollar. So if they owe us 200, we might get maybe 80, 90, or 100. So on average, the bank's probably not going to take 50. But if we owe 200 and we get 150, well, now we're in that range of, it makes more sense to agree to a short sale and agree to take less than it does to foreclose on you. The other thing is, it's a little bit of PR. The bank doesn't look like quite such the bad guy if they agree to a short sale rather than foreclosing on someone. Also, they know that in a short sale, the sellers usually want to cooperate, and so they don't destroy the house, and they don't rip all the copper, and they don't take every last bit of, they don't take the furnace out of the house. They just leave nicely. Versus the bank knows that in a lot of cases, if they're going to foreclose on someone, the house might get trashed, they have to hire attorneys, there's more expense involved, they've got to rekey the house, winterize it, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of expense for a bank. So it's not self-serving if we tell somebody, look, the banks want to pay us and they want to agree to a short sale. It's true. They do want to do that. They don't want to foreclose on your house. Now, here's a landmine. Notice number 4F. A seller, most of them will ask you, should I stop making my mortgage payment? Well, do not advise them. Don't say yes, don't say no. Remind them that you're not a tax accountant, you're not an attorney, and I can't advise you on what you should do with your mortgage. And be firm on that. Don't give them the wink, don't give them the nod, don't give them anything. People will remember this. But this is a landmine. If you advise people to stop paying their mortgage, that is bad. There could be legal ramifications, could be ugly. So absolutely do not tell someone, yeah, just quit making your mortgage payment. Don't do that. But they will ask, so you need to be ready to fend that off. Also, in a little bit, we're going to talk about what should they do, assuming they've stopped making their mortgage payment, which a lot of people have. Not everybody, but a lot of them have. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, go on to number 5 on our outline. You have the listing. They say, yes, let's go, let's start. Now what do? Where do you start the price? In a normal pricing presentation, you want to look at comparable sales, try to find out the best market price. Seller wants a higher number, you want a lower number, you end up in the middle. That's the way you do a normal presentation. A short sale presentation, there's a couple of different schools of thought on how do you price the house. Now, one school of thought from the Certified Distressed Property Institute is you take all the debt that they have. So again, our house of $200,000. You take all the debt plus all of our fees. So you got commission, state tax, title insurance, attorney fees. So that, if you go with that school of thought, you would probably start the house at, $220. And then from there, you would work on bringing the price down. Now, we already said that the house is worth about $150, so we know that $220 is an unrealistic number. Part of the logic for this pricing method is where if you start it at $150 and you sell it today for $145, the bank might say, well, gee, realtor, you didn't try very hard to get all of our money back. We would prefer that you at least try to get all of our money back. So there's part of the logic for starting it at an unrealistically high number in today's market, but then quickly bringing the price down. Another way, and this works better with local lenders if you can actually talk to them, is simply ask them, look, lender, where do you want me to start the price? Now, you bring up the theory of starting it at debt plus fees. Some lenders will say, yeah, got to do that. Other lenders might say, nope, we're realistic around here. We understand the market. Just start it at the right number. So there's a couple of different schools of thought. It also depends on if the lender has talked to the seller. I listed one recently where the lender said, list with a realtor, start it at this price, which is already less than the debt. And so that's what we did. The lender advised that, that's where we start. So the question of where do I start the list price? It's kind of a fuzzy number, depends on the bank, depends on the seller, depends on how much time we have before the sheriff's sale. If they've missed one payment and a possible sheriff's sale is way out in the future, we can afford the luxury of starting at a slightly higher price and then working the price down. If the sheriff's sale is in about 2 months, I don't have time to start at the right price. I got to be really aggressive, and we're going to talk about, we might do price reductions as quick as once a week. So that question of where do you start the price is a little bit fuzzy. Now, as an aside to this, all you agents out there that are working with buyers, and if you work with buyers and a buyer says, hey, I want to get a deal, I want to buy a short sale house because I heard I can get a deal on those, you might want to also talk these buyers through how do prices get started, because otherwise it makes the rest of us look bad. If I list that house with 200 grand of debt at 220 and everybody in the planet knows it's worth 150, I look like a moron for listing it at that high of a price. Well, some of you might want to let me look like a moron, but in general, if we're all going to work together as a team of realtors, it might be better to explain, look, this might have nothing to do with the listing agent or the seller. This might be the bank's requirements for where we start with this number. So, there's the essence of all getting along. Next one, 5B. You need to have this language. Now print off, if you take anything out of this presentation, I need you to take this out of it. So print this off, cut and paste this, and put it in every listing you have that's a short sale. And this comes directly from NAR. NAR rules are, for commissions, is that whatever is offered as MLS compensation, NAR rules are that you have to pay that percentage off of the sales price. Not off the net sales price after credits, off of the sales price. Except, and here's the only exception that is allowed by NAR, if you put these remarks in, and you have to say that this is a short sale, that's one requirement, and you have to say if the commission is reduced by the lenders or the courts, then the co-brokerage amount will be whatever the amount that you have done as a listing agreement. In my example here, it would be 40% of the total commission paid. But again, that's not a set number at all. It's whatever you agree to with the seller. So those are the three things. This is a short sale, has to be in there. If the commission is reduced, now notice how it says if it's reduced by the lenders or the courts. Not if I, the listing agent, simply reduce it, or the seller asks me to reduce it, or some other thing, but if the lenders or the courts reduce the commission, then the co-brokerage amount will be X, whatever X is. Now notice in my example here, I put if the commission, then I put in parentheses 6% total. I learned this hard way. Had a friendly disagreement with another agent where I was offering a 6% co-brokerage amount, but the total listing was 7%. And again, all these numbers are just random numbers. But I didn't put in what the total commission was in this language. Well, the courts, or actually the lender, reduced the commission total to 6%. So then the payout was 40% of 6, 2.4, and that's what they got at closing, but the data sheet still said 3. So the other agency had assumed that the total commission was 6 being split 50-50. And then when they saw the total was still 6, in their mind, on the closing statement, they assumed they were still going to get 3 based on the 50-50. And we had to talk it through, and they understood after we talked it through, but I could have made it easier on the other agency by putting in ahead of time, here's what the total commission is, and if it's reduced, then it's going to be this amount less. So this will help create less stress between you and your other agents. And on that note about commission, most banks are going to pay 6. You can try charging more. Some local banks will pay more. Most of the large national lenders will pay 6. A few of them, their rules are they'll pay 5. Another thing to watch out for too, a lot of times if you sell your own listing, they will reduce it even further. So that's a talk for another day. Okay, last thing with section 5. Should I ask their lender to start the short sale process? And the answer is probably no. Until you have an offer, most of these lenders don't even want to talk to us, mainly because they have so many short sales on their desk already that have offers on them that they have to work on. The theoretical, hey, I listed a house and I might get an offer someday, is a little less of a burning question in their mind. So unless you have a good local lender that you can work with and you already know, more than likely the big national lenders don't even want to talk to you until we have an offer on the table. Bruce, how are we doing on time?
15 minutes or a little less.
All right.
A little less, more like 12.
Okay, moving along. When and how often should we drop the price? I mentioned earlier it kind of depends on how soon the sheriff's sale is. Absolutely for sure, you should drop the price at least once a month. These sales should not sit out there forever. So you'll have your listing addendum where you can drop the price, but you want to be aggressive on these. You want to move the price down. The banks also do not want to take these back as foreclosures. They want to move them along too. Also, quickly for tax considerations, there are some exemptions for federal IRS taxes, and you'll see in one of the attachments that we have information from a local accountant about this. But there's exemptions if the sale closes in 2012, and nobody knows if they're going to extend those to 2013. So there are going to be some important, you're going to want to tell your seller, talk to a tax person, but it might be important that we get this done yet in this year, not into the next year. Okay, so we get an offer on the table. Now what do I do? A couple things. One, you might want to counter at least once. This goes back to the thought of you want to give the appearance to the bank that you're trying to get as much money as you can. Now, if somebody offers you full price, great, take it. But if they offer you half price, don't just let your seller just take it. You have to do the dance a little bit. Try to get as much money back for the bank as you can. So probably counter at least once. And make sure the addendum SSO is in there. That is our own addendum from Zip Forms, the short sale addendum to the offer. As a listing agent, you'll see 7D there. I would have it already signed by the seller and in ML Exchange as an attachment, right with the condition report, lead paint, whatever else. A lot of agents, if they're not experienced with short sales, they'll forget about that form, and then they won't have it with their offer. And that's an important form to have. Last thing about earnest money on the addendum SSO. If you look at line 25 says deadlines run from the time of lender approval, all deadlines, and then it says excluding the deadline for the payment of earnest money. Here's a problem that we've run into. Buyer puts down earnest money. The short sale stretches out a long time. Possibly the banks are unwilling to cooperate. Possibly the seller just gets frustrated. Well, now what happens if the seller moves away, they're frustrated, they know the short sale is not going to happen, they're going to get foreclosed on, they're depressed. Now what? Well, we've seen sellers just leave. And then the buyer wants their earnest money back, and they say, hey, I want my earnest money, and we can't disperse it because we don't have a signed cancellation. So there's two ways around this. One way is to simply cross out that exclusion and have the buyer not pay earnest money until we have lender approval of the short sale. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it, and again, attorneys out there might not like this, but have the seller sign a cancellation and mutual release and have that in the file. And tell the seller, look, we need this. If this doesn't get approved, we're going to give their earnest money back. Now, from a legal standpoint, is that the best way to do it? Probably not. But from a practical standpoint, if the buyers get mad and they want to walk and they don't get their earnest money back, it's mainly us realtors that are going to look bad. So talk to your broker about that. Probably the best way is to simply have them pay the earnest money after we have short sale approval. Okay, moving on. We have an accepted offer. We've haggled, we've countered, we have an accepted offer. Now what do we do? You got to get it to the bank. You got to find out who is going to be the person in charge of this. You got to fax it to them. You're probably going to have to fax it to them multiple times. It sounds odd faxing in this day and age, but a lot of the bigger banks, they don't want emails, they want it by fax. So you have to fax it. And make sure you have everything they ask for. Usually they'll send you a list, a couple pages of here's all the documents we need. Don't send them half of the documents. Don't send them 3/4 of the documents. Send them all. Because what happens is, if your file is incomplete, it's just going to sit on somebody's desk. So many of these people we've talked to, the negotiators for the banks, they have 200, 300, 400 files on their desk. So if you're either in the complete file pile where you can move on, or you're in the incompletes where it sits. So don't send them 3/4 of the package. And as an aside, I would put the loan number at the top of every page. Helps them if a form gets out of order. Be patient, be nice. These loan officers are frustrated and they're having a hard time with this. And make sure you do this in conjunction with your title company. Your title company can help you out a lot on keeping the paperwork straight, getting things to the lender if they need things quick, etc. So don't wait to work with your title company. You're going to need them right away. Then another quick thing, people say, well, can I work on both the first lien holder and the second lien holder at the same time? It's usually a problem because the second lien holder often doesn't want to start their process until they find out what they're being allotted from the first lien holder. A lot of people are confused by this, but here's the thing. If the first lien holder is owed this much money, $150,000, and they're only going to get $130,000. They know that if the second lien holder gets zero, now they have no incentive to cooperate with the short sale. So usually the first lien holder will allot a certain amount of money for the second. Could be a percentage, could be a little bit, we don't know. Once the second is told how much they're allotted, then they begin. And that's another one of the reasons why these short sales take so long. And lastly, why did they wait till the last second to give us an answer? And now this is a practical world thing. I used to get really frustrated. Usually the second lien holder would say a day or two before closing that, okay, we'll agree to the short sale, and I know we were being allotted $3,000 from the first, but we will do it for $6,000. And at first you'd think, well, wait a minute, why are you telling me this now? Why am I hearing this at the very end of things? But then I figured it out. The reason that they're telling us at the very end of things is they know that at the last second, everybody's really motivated to get this done. Sellers, buyers, agents. The problem this creates, and this is an ethical problem, which I want you to talk with your broker about how you handle it, but in theory, if there's more monies to be made available to the sale of a house, it should go to the first lien holder until the first is fully paid off. Then extra monies can go to the second. So we have an ethical quandary here, because a lot of times the second lien holders will say, hey, we don't care who pays this extra money. Seller can pay it, buyer can pay it, you can pay it, agent, doesn't matter. Whoever wants, but in order to do this, this is what we need. So you're going to keep this in mind the next time you take on a short sale and they say, yeah, we have 2 lien holders. You're going to want to think about this. This is common. This happens a lot. And I don't have an easy answer on what's the right way to do it. And if you have a loan with Bank of America, or if the seller has a loan, you're going to use the Equator. If you don't know what Equator is, go online, www.equator.com, and that's the online program that Bank of America uses to run their short sales. All right, wrapping things up. Here's a few problems that I want you to head off before they come up. A buyer who says, because buyers are excited, hey, when is this going to close? Or, I have to have this closed by the end of the month because I'm moving out of my place. Or my rate lock is going to end on my loan. Buyers cannot get any date set in their head. These take 3 months, they might take 6 months. We've had some take a year, sometimes they take more. There is no certainty with these. So the people that buy short sales are ones that need to be able to wait, to deal with frustration and anxiety, and sorry, I can't tell you any. So let's just be clear ahead of time. I'm not going to give you any. For sure, absolutely, you can move in by this date. So don't do that. Now, can the buyer move in prior to closing? Well, the question is, what happens if the short sale never gets approved? Well, they can move in, sure. The seller can take the rent or however that works, but I don't want to promise you that it's just simply a matter of time before the short sale gets approved. We don't know. If they say that's okay, I'd be willing to move out again, yeah, okay, then we can talk about it. But some of these might not get approved. Okay, will the bank fix things? The roof is shot. Will the bank fix it? A lot of times the answer is no. Usually in short sales it's no. The bank's not going to put in money to fix stuff. So ahead of time, push hard. The concept is no. You're getting the house as is. That's why the addendum SSO says the house is as is. To the seller, number 9D. Seller, hey, now you've already told me, seller, that you're not going to make your mortgage payment. I didn't tell you to do that, but that's what you told me. Okay, now I want you to keep up on the rest of the bills, though. Keep LP in the tank. Pay for the LP. Pay the taxes if you can. Pay to keep the lawn mowed. Pay to keep the heat on. In particular, pay your water bill. A lot of times these short sale lenders will not agree to pay the water bill. And so now we get to closing and we have a $500 water bill. And guess who ends up paying it if you don't head that problem off ahead of time? So if you don't mind paying for water bills, then don't bring it up. But push the seller like, look, if you're already not paying your house payment, at least please pay all these other things. And push the sellers hard. Get tax advice and legal advice from someone else, not from me. Can't give you that. You have to go talk to someone else. Don't just look it up on the internet. All right, one last key point to the buyers. Buyers are going to get frustrated and they're going to say, can we just speed this up? The answer is yes, you can, absolutely. Here's how you do it. Pay the full debt. If you want to have for sure that you get the house and you can move in soon, pay the full debt. There's the answer. But if you want to get a deal, if you have to get a discount, then you get to wait. And I get to tell you that I don't know when it's going to close or if it's going to close. But if they say, well, yeah, but I have to have this house and I have to have it soon, great, pay the full debt. And actually, you'd be surprised, once in a while people do that. oh, it's only another 10 grand and I can have this done, I might be willing to do that. So remind them, if you pay the full debt, we can close on this. Then we don't need lender approval. And then also the buyer and their bank are going to ask you, well, we're not going to have a lot of time left. Well, when should we do the appraisal? When should we do the inspections? What about the tests? Well, again, buyer, if you're going to get a deal on these properties, you might have to risk some money. You might have to pay for appraisals, pay for inspections and tests, and then the deal falls apart later. That might be a risk you take. But if you want to save every last nickel and dime, and you don't want to do anything until you get full short sale approval, then you might run out of time. Because once we get short sale approval, they usually want to close within 30 days, which doesn't give you a lot of time to have 10, 15 days to do an inspection, and then 45 days to do an appraisal, and then get all your loan approved. So there's risk in doing these. Be aware of that. Do we have any time left, Bruce? Are we good? All right, 2 minutes. We're going to wrap it up by a few problems that we've seen that have been unique to properties. Well, we already talked about the last second request for money. I had a sale this spring, Bank of America. We've been working on this for months. And 10 days before closing, Bank of America said in an email, they said, by the way, our office is moving from Arizona to Florida, and your file is packed in a truck. Sorry, we don't know even where it is. It'll be 30 to maybe 60 days before we get to it, and please don't call us because we're really busy. That buyer walked. Didn't know what I could say to that. Don't have an answer for that. Don't know how I can fix that. That's not something I can head off ahead of time. What about sellers leaving their stuff? You're going to find this. Tell the buyers when they're at the house, agents with buyers, you see all this junk laying around? I know the standard language in the offer says all personal property has to be removed. I understand. But guess what? Most of this junk's going to be here. Just be prepared for that. It'll still be here at closing. I need you to know that. Know that the commissions, the banks are going to try to push our commissions down right at the end. They're going to push 6, sometimes 5, sometimes 4. Just be aware that's going to happen. Another problem we see is if a bank has PMI coverage. We've had numerous times where we've had offers that were really good and then didn't get approved, and then it got sold at sheriff's sale later for much less money, and we couldn't figure out why. Well, we found out that the PMI coverage that the lender had said that if they got foreclosed on, PMI kicked in and paid the bank. If the bank agreed to a short sale, PMI did not cover them. And so even though logically you'd think, well, geez, it sold at the short sale for a lot of money less, that made sense to them because PMI insurance covered them. And then the last one I want to bring up, which was hilarious, I just was working on one where the bank said, yes, we agree to a short sale as long as we get paid in full. I'm not really sure if they understood the definition of a short sale in that case. So there's lots of attachments. I want to encourage everyone. You can call me or email me anytime. I don't care what office you work for. I'd be glad to help. Glad to give you advice on this. And up on the screen, we'll put all my contact information. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.